founder and the former president of the Sexuality and Aging Consortium. I've been a sexuality educator for well over 40 years. As a child, I received no formal sexuality education at all. My first memory of learning about sex was from my biology teacher in my sophomore year in high school, when he used to hold up a teaspoon and said, "This is filled with sperm, and there would be millions of sperm. What chance does the one ovum have against them?" And that was my beginning sex education. I was a high school teacher. I'd just begun after raising my own children, and I was teaching history. And it was the early 70s, and a very liberal high school decided they would have a full year psychology course and sociology course. They hired a psychologist to help me develop the course. And the psychologist was Sol Gordon, who was famous nationally for marvelous lectures on sex education way back there. And he was grand fun. And so at the end of the year that we developed the psychology and sociology courses, we held a sex week. And we took all our 7 classes to the auditorium, and Sol Gordon did his usual presentation, and we showed films. Well, for the next 15 years he had left, I developed that into a course at the end of my course, a unit at the end of the course called Human Sexual Behavior. And I developed it from a historical, sociological, psychological, ethical, and health point of view. So it was very different than the way most sex was taught in high school. It was after I'd had the students for a long time, they really knew me and they loved the course. What's more, the course was an elective. So I had students who wanted to be there. I had them for a full year, and I developed a whole approach to sexuality education. I love that question because it made me think, what was the first time? And it would be very different than most sexuality educators. I had had no trouble in 15 years teaching in a high school. That was how liberal the community was, and the parents all wished they could take the course. It's very difficult for me to pick one person. There are so many people I've really depended on, admired, and been privileged to know. So Gordon was important because he started me on this journey. But I think back, David Bates, who was a Quaker, who wrote a marvelous book, A Christian Response to the Sexual Revolution, which changed the whole approach in terms of religion, being much more about how you were treating other people rather than obeying certain rules. And I admired also Dick Cross, who had started a program at the medical school in New Jersey. We called it Sex Week. And we were training doctors to be more understanding of sexuality, and there's still a huge need for this. And Dick was an older person, and he modeled still being interested in sexuality and sexuality education. I admired Michael Carrera, who gave the most inspirational speeches. One could never measure up to Michael, and he has worked to develop a comprehensive approach to sexuality education and to pregnancy prevention. I just want to mention one other person, Leonore Tiefer, who is a brilliant theoretician a woman who understands the complexity of women's sexuality and who is a therapist and a researcher, but always appreciating the importance of sex education. And she advocates for that, and so I always felt that she really respected me as a sexuality educator. And so I've been very privileged, and I can't pick one hero. I could name 10 more. I started with SIECUS when I was still teaching high school. Lee Howling-Grady would bring me in to review films. It was the days of the SIECUS report, now long gone, and we would review films in them. And so I would go all the way to New York. I became involved in SIECUS, finally was president of the board. And so I got to know all these wonderful people. And so SIECUS for me was also a place where I could publish. I had a number of articles in the SIECUS report, and writing forces you to really think about what you're doing, what you believe, and it helped me to communicate my values in terms of sexuality education. So SIECUS has been an important part of my background and my life as a sexuality educator.